Fighting rage into a second day, a hostage crisis is also unfolding. Graphic and bloody videos have surfaced appearing to show militants taking Israelis hostage. This morning on Meet the Press, Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying Americans could be among those hostages. The NSC confirms Americans have been killed. Also today, NBC News learning exclusively the U.S. military is planning to move U.S. Navy ships and military aircraft closer to Israel as a show of support. The U.S. will also immediately begin supplying Israel with munitions and other military supplies. And there are growing fears of an even broader conflict. Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah traded artillery and rocket fire Sunday. This after Hezbollah fired at Israeli military sites on the Lebanon border. With me now, four-star U.S. Army retired General Barry McCaffrey. He has completed 4 combat tours, has been wounded 3 times. He's an NBC News national security commentator. General, Prime Minister Netanyahu warning of a long and difficult war. What might that look like?
I'm not sure anyone understands yet. The complicating factor of these hostages, possibly dozens and dozens of Israelis, undoubtedly some American dual citizens, never mind the well over 1,000 killed and wounded in Israel. So the Israeli Defense Forces have 2 problems facing them. First, they got to overcome Hamas fighters inside Israel along the Gaza frontier, these villages that they captured. And then secondly, and I'm almost sure of it, they're going to have to go in on the ground into the Gaza Strip to try and recover their hostages. Armor, infantry force, supported by fighter aircraft, dominate the scene and then try and find them in basements and tunnels. It's almost an impossible task. And the other hand, they've got to watch the northern frontier, where Hezbollah, with 110,000 rockets, could potentially enter the war also. A very perilous situation for Israel.
So let's stay on that point, General McCaffrey. I'm going to ask my producers to pull up the map so that our viewers at home can look at this as we talk about it, which is when you talk about that northern border, when you talk about artillery and fire there, what are the risks of it escalating on the northern border?
Well, I think it's significant, and that's one of the reasons that the Biden administration, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and Tony Blinken have been so careful about the deterrence of escalation of this conflict. The carrier strike group that they moved into the eastern Mediterranean has well over 10,000 sailors, very powerful force. We're also moving fighter squadrons probably into Italy, F-35, F-22, F-16 aircraft squadrons, trying to signal to the Lebanese, as well as the Syrian military, as well as the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, don't enter this conflict. But I think the temptation for Hezbollah to enter it would be significant, and they would be a major threat to Israel. Hamas itself can't bring down the Israeli state. Attacks from multiple countries could do it.
I want to talk about the U.S. military sending aircraft, the carrier strike group that you referenced, moving closer to Israel. Talk me through what is on that carrier, the kind of support that it offers, both in terms of resources itself and the message that it sends.
Well, it's a powerful warfighting force. It's not just a carrier strike force itself with its fighter aircraft, but it's also the supporting vessels, including a cruiser, which is an incredible air defense platform. So it will be at risk if it enters the conflict zone, but fully prepared to fight. And then in addition, in the background, U.S. Air Force combat power is moving into the region, stealth capability, major ability to conduct strikes against anyone threatening Israel, or to conduct non-combatant evacuation if required to bring Americans and other refugees out of Israel.
You referenced, General McCaffrey, the ongoing hostage situation that we're watching playing out in Gaza and the complexity of that as it relates specifically to those hostages. When you zoom out, bigger picture, how does it then limit Israel's military options?
It's going to pose a huge challenge to them. You know, they're used to conducting aircraft strikes in Gaza with very small diameter munitions, in which they so-called double tap a building. The first one's inert. Palestinians are supposed to evacuate the area, and then they bring down the building. They're not going to be able to do it at this time, nor will the Israelis ever know for sure where these dozens of hostages are being held. So I think their only option left will be at some point they're going to have to go in, grab the surface area of the Gaza Strip, fight off the Hamas fighters, and then try and locate through intelligence sources and door-to-door searches, locate their hostages. A really challenging situation, but the Israelis will never abandon their citizens, and they're not going to get them back without using military power.
General McCaffrey, I want to play some sound from the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations today. Take a listen.
Hamas is a genocidal Islamist jihadist terror organization. It is no different than ISIS. It is no different than Al-Qaeda. There is no reasoning with genocidal jihadists. They do not want dialogue. They do not want conversation. They want one thing and one thing only: the annihilation of the Jewish state.
General McCaffrey, your thoughts?
Well, there's no question. I've been listening to some of the Middle Eastern pundits on TV in the last couple of days, talking about the right of return, the land they were evicted from 75 years ago. They're never going back. Israel would cease to exist as a state, and the Jewish people would be killed if that happened. So we have two forces at work here. By the way, I am not convinced the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, a couple of million of them packed in, impoverished, desperate, want this war. Hamas does. This may well have killed peace negotiations, particularly the Saudi stepping forward to recognize Israel as a state that has a right to exist. They may have killed the peace process. That may well have been a major goal, not just of Hamas, but of their Iranian supporters. By the way, I'm sure there's a planning cell from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard inside Gaza, and they helped put together this strategic surprise attack by Hamas, which was very well carried out. And, you know, how do you train paragliders in Gaza without the Israelis picking up on it? I'd be amazed if that training wasn't done in Iran and then returned into the Gaza Strip. So this is one perilous situation for the region as well as the Israelis.